We're live, Sandy.
Hi, I'm Sandy Rindlesbach, a Handi Quilter National Educator. Welcome to Handi Quilter Summer Quilt Fest. We are so excited to be here. This afternoon, I am going to be quilting a simple little quilt and just showing you a couple of techniques with Pro Stitcher. And the thing we want to make sure that you know that quilting's fun. We want you to have fun. Just relax, enjoy, don't stress over anything I show you. Just take it in and have fun and relax. Couple things I want to point out is we do have free shipping for any machines that you order this week. Now be aware that though that free shipping is for the continuous US, so the 48 states. The other thing to keep in mind is prices are going up July 1st. So if you are considering a long arm, now is the time to purchase it. There's also a 15% off on all accessories. When you go in and order your accessories, go ahead and make sure that you are using the coupon code HQQF. And we want you to just have fun this afternoon. We're just going to go through, we're going to quilt this little quilt, and then we're going to do a couple of other projects and just have fun. Don't stress. Quilting is fun. That's why we're here. So I'm going to go ahead and start. First thing I did before I start to quilt is I've set up my machine ready to quilt, but the other thing I do is I actually test my tension. Now, when I test my tension, I actually have an extra piece of fabric sandwich that I use to test my tension. And I use these grips, the easy clamps, to attach it to my poles. The reason I use this is because then I can unattach the bottom easy clamp and I can look at it and turn it over and I can verify that my tension settings are correct. For me, it just is easy, makes it simple for me to test tension. In fact, as we're talking about tension, I'm going to give you a pointer. If you're kind of a little bit apprehensive about tension, my recommendation is just take some time, take and make a simple quilt sandwich. Put one color thread in your top, another color thread in your bobbin, and just play with your tension. Do your tension. Then make sure you've set your bobbin tension correctly, and then just play with that top tension so that you know what it looks like when that top tension is too tight, and you know what it looks like when that top tension is too loose. Just take the time to play with it where you can be relaxed and you can play. And then when you have an issue with tension, you've already worked through the issues and you kind in a relaxed atmosphere, so you can now go in and you know what you need to do to adjust your tension. Let me move these out of the way. And we are ready to start quilting. What we're going to do is we're going to quilt this little quilt that's in front of me. It's just a simple little quilt, and we're going to, first of all, I've basted the outside. Now, if I'm doing a little quilt like this, I I will baste it. Sometimes I will baste the inside. Sometimes I will actually use the quilting itself and do some quilting to help stabilize the quilt. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stitch in the ditch on the inside of this diamond shape. And I'm going to be using Pro Stitcher to do that. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to position my needle right here in the corner, and I am going to go to Pro Stitcher. I'm going to hit record. I'm going to hit mark, and I'm going to actually follow along here so that I am creating my diamond shape so that when I go to stitch this, it is stitching in the ditch. Now, you can't actually hear the beep, but if you are doing this at home, you should be hearing the beep of where you are touching each of those lines. Now, with Mark, what it's doing, it is doing a point-to-point design. So I am actually setting points so that as it quilts, it actually then will quilt from one point to the other of where I have actually set it. I'm going to now go up and around, finishing that diamond shape. And I am going to now go ahead and, let me finish up that last one. I'm now going to go ahead and stitch that. So I'm going to go to Pro Stitcher, select Quilt. I'm going to hit Run, but before that, I'm going to actually make sure my stitch button is selected, my start tie-offs are selected, my end tie-offs are selected, and my pull-up is on. I'm going to hit Run. I have the Verify screen that comes up telling me make sure my needle is up. I'm going to hit Proceed. There's a pause. Takes that stitch so I can pull up my bobbin thread. I'm going to hold on to both of my threads, and I'm going to hit Resume. And it is going to stitch. Now watch. And I have completed my stitch in the ditch. So now I have this area isolated. It basically, instead of basting that, I've used the stitching to help me to stabilize it. I'm going to go ahead and cut my threads. I'm just going to set them here for now. And I am going to fill in this diamond shape area with a design. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is go ahead to File, Clear All, because I have stitched that out. I'm going to actually go ahead and here, I'm going to select my area first. So let's go ahead and select an area. Now my area I want to do is I want my design to not come all the way out to these corners. I'm going to bring it in approximately 1/4 of an inch.
Sandy, are you using the laser to mark or the needle?
Yes, I'm using the laser needle to tell me where I'm actually going. That's telling me where that needle is going to stitch. So what I'm doing is on this glide foot where the needle goes through, I'm kind of using that as a guide to help me as I'm setting up my area. And I'm going from corner to corner, coming in just a little bit, using the laser light and the markings on the foot to help me as I am setting that up. So you can see on the screen, I have that diamond shape. Now let's go ahead and select our design that we're going to be stitching. I'm going to go to File, Design, Open. I'm going to go to Blocks, and I'm going to go to this Block 10 Leaves, and I'm going to select Open. Now, can you look at it there? It's like, that's not quite what I want it to do, so I'm going to modify this particular design. I'm going to go to Modify. When I going to modify, I'm going to actually go in and hit Rotate, and I want it to turn 45 degrees. So I'm going to go over to my sidebar on the right and hit 45 degrees. And you can see it's sitting there, but I'm going to actually use Skew and select my Skew to make it now fit that area. Now, that's the one, looks perfect like that. But you know what? I think I want to do a little bit more in there. I'm going to go to design and I'm going to select that same design again. And this time I'm going to actually leave it in that direction. I'm going to hit skew again. And can you see how now I've got one on top of the other? But when I stitch it, I want that to stitch out as one design rather than stitching out as two designs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit here at my bottom, there's the two boxes and the X. I'm going to hit select all. Can you see how it now select both of those designs? I'm going to baseline those two designs together. Now when it stitches, it's going to stitch as though it was one design. So let's go to Pro Stitch Your Quilt. We're going to hit run. We're going to hit proceed. I'm pull up my bobbin thread. I'm going to hit resume. And can you see it is stitching the first design. Now I could have selected different design for each square, but I opted to combine them. We'll wait for this to finish. Almost there. And it's tying off. So there we have that fun little design right in the center of that diamond shape. If you have comments or questions, let us know. Just so you're aware, the thread I'm using is a Superior brand thread. It is called Fantastico. It is a variegated pink thread, which has a very slight variegation, but it gives because of that slight variegation, it gives a little bit of more movement with this particular thread using this thread. And also comment, let us know that you're there, where you're from. And if you have any questions. So I am done here. A Pro Stitcher, now you're looking at what I'm doing here with Pro Stitcher because of the great sale that Handi Quilter is having right now on Pro Stitcher. Now is the time to do it. I know you can add it to existing machines. If you don't have a Pro Stitcher, you can add it to an existing machine, or as you get a new machine, go ahead and add it at this time because it is a great sale price right now on that Pro Stitcher. Pro Stitcher allows me to do things like this without a lot of effort. It just makes it easier and fun and is a great way to finish your quilts. I'm doing custom quilting. It's pretty simple, makes it easy. And when you also could do an edge-to-edge design, which makes it really fast and really simple, but it's great. It's a great option for your quilting. Okay, so now let's decide what we want to do. I've finished this diamond shape. But let's go ahead and do another going around here and doing in the ditch around, so that we are doing in the ditch just like we did before. But I'm going to go ahead and start here. I'm going to do basically the same thing using my laser light right on the seam. And I'm going to, first of all, though, I'm going to hit File, Clear All, because I don't need anything on my screen at this point as I'm doing this. One thing also to remember is if I'm leaning on my bars here, it slightly distorts. So as you're setting up and as it is actually quilting, try not to. It's very easy to lean against it, but try not to lean against it. It helps you to get cleaner lines if you are not. So I'm going to go back to Pro Stitcher Record. I'm going to hit Mark again to place that first mark. Again, it is a point to point. So I'm rather than, most of my lines aren't going to be perfectly straight. So I'm going to actually use Mark to help me, not just from one point to the other, but randomly throughout this line to help it stay right where I need it to be. So I could use a ruler for this, but guess what? I don't have a ruler base on, and I don't have my ruler foot, the foot on that I need, my short foot. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the tools I have available, which are Pro Stitcher. And right here, I'm getting really, really close to where it's not going to reach. So I'm aware that that's pretty close there. It does fit, but it's really close. So I might need to move for my next step, advance my quilt just a little bit. So you can see there, can you see, even though these corners here are cut off a little bit, can you see my design? I also had them cut off just a little bit so that it actually truly does follow my design. I'm going to baseline that. I should have baselined the other one. Remember, baseline is our friend, and we're going to quilt it. Again, following the same steps as before. Pull up my bobbin, hold on to it as I start quilting. Can you see how great that looked? Using that as doing my stitch in the ditch, using that mark option in Pro Stitcher. Makes it just work great. Okay, our next thing we're going to do is we've got these triangles, but what I want to do again is I want to stitch in the ditch, but I'm going to kind of see where my machine fits. You can see how tight it is here. It's a little tight for me, whereas I do have some space here. So I'm actually going to advance my quilt. Actually, I'm going to advance it enough that I can hit around this other sashing here as well. So I'm going to advance my quilt. So give me a second. Let's advance. To get. Okay, that's good. Okay, let's make sure we still have it where I need it. Okay, I can still fit it. Perfect. So let's go ahead and do this one. Again, I'm going to kind of set it. I'm going to use mark again, but this time I'm going to go ahead and clear all first of all. I'm going to use mark again, record, mark. Again, lining this up as best I can so that I can stitch in the ditch. We're just following it around. And actually, I'm going to hit my refresh button so we can see on the screen what I'm actually doing. Because if we don't hit that refresh button, we won't see on the screen what we need to do. Hit refresh again. And I'm just going around. And every once in a while we hear the ding. Any questions or comments? Remember, why? Well, let me tell you my history. I actually had a Handi Quilter Fusion for years. I don't remember. I bought it in 2010. And a number of years ago, I decided I wanted to add Pro Stitcher because it's another tool. I love doing free motion. I love doing rulers and thought for a long time, oh, I don't need Pro Stitcher because wait, I can do it free motion. But then as I looked into it and did more research, it's like, you know what? That's another tool that I can use. So why not have all the tools available? So now when I quilt, a lot of my quilts, I'm actually using Pro Stitcher, I'm using free motion, and I'm using rulers on a lot of my quilts that I'm doing when I'm doing a custom quilt. It also allowed me to go faster when I'm doing an edge-to-edge quilt, that I can do an edge-to-edge, I can set it up, and I actually can do some other things as well while the machine is actually stitching out. Now, one thing that I do always when I'm doing an edge-to-edge is I always watch that first row stitch out. I don't walk away at all with that first row. I want to see exactly what it's doing. I do my advance and I set up my second row, but I am always within hearing distance so that I can hear my machine stitching, because I want to be able to catch any issues that might arise before it gets to the point where I can't go back and fix it. I can always hear when my bobbin's running low. If you're tuned in, you can hear the difference between a full bobbin and an empty bobbin, but I always am there where I'm very quickly available for my machine if I'm not standing over it. It's almost mesmerizing though to watch it actually quilt. So it's fun to actually watch Pro Stitcher quilt out these very intricate designs, because there's some really intricate designs that I'm going to let Pro Stitcher do. Others I might want to do myself. Okay, so we have this. Let's go ahead and hit quilt. And we're going to hit run, proceed. And it's going to take that stitch. I'm going to pull up my bobbin. I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to hit resume. And it's going to start stitching. So it's going to do that stitch in the ditch again. And it's done. How fast was that? So it has done the stitch in the ditch around that. Now, whenever I bring up my bobbin thread to cut, I actually am going through the same motions. And I'll show you next time. We're going to actually break down what I'm doing as I'm cutting my threads. So I now have these areas to do. One thing I really like to do is look at what designs I'm using, and I like to be able to do a design that has curves adjacent to a design that's got more straight lines. So I'm going to fill in these triangles, but what I'm specifically going to look is for something that comes this way, that goes into the center, so that kind of frames that center. So I'm going to go into the triangles and I'm going to find a design that does that for me. So let's go ahead and clear all here. Let's go into File, Design, Open. As it opens, we're going to select Triangles. And I'm going to look for a triangle that might fit those needs of what I want it to do. So let's just kind of look and see what we can find. And I can't find exactly what I want here, but you know what? I can make some things work for me. Why not try this inside a triangle? I haven't tried it here, but hey, let's go ahead and do it. Now, what I'm going to do first of all is I've selected that design. I am going to go ahead and create my area. So I'm going to go to Area, Multi-Point. And it's a triangle, so think about how many points a triangle has. A triangle always has 3 points. Now, other thing to keep in mind is with an area, it always is going to create a closed shape. You don't need to close it. It automatically closes it. So if I were to go over here and hit this point again, it now changes so that I have a point count 4. When I go in, because I'm going to do some skewing, but first of all, I'm going to do some rotating because I want my point to be right like that. If I go to skew, my triangle skew is not available to me, which tells me there's a problem. So I'm going to actually clear my area and I'm going to redo my area. Even though we did it once, we're going to try it again. Doesn't take very long to do. So area multi-point, multi-point, multi-point. I'm going to go to modify skew. I now have triangle skew available to me. Can you see what it's done? Yes.
How do you increase the font size on the tablet? Is that an option?
Okay, let me show you something right now. If you go here to your settings tab, which is here on the right, can you see where it says display? I'm going to hit display. Can you see where it says touch? If I hit touch, I can make it decrease like that, where basically the labels are gone. If I hit touch again, can you see how it changed it? And it gave me the indicators of what each of those icons mean. That really is how you can increase it or decrease it. As far as doing it from this point, I am not sure if it can be done other than doing that touch to change it back and forth so that you actually have not just the icons, but the labels as well. Hopefully that answers your question. Couple things I want to see on this design is I don't know. I'm going to modify it by resizing it. I'm going to turn on my lock because I want to see what happens if I change that. Okay, it didn't. I'm going to undo because I want it to go back to where it was. Let's skew it again. So a lot of times when I'm in Pro Stitcher, I'm playing because I might find a different way to do something that I didn't think about. So why not play until it does what you really want it to do? One thing I am going to do is I'm going to hit align because I want it to align bottom and I want it to align left. So now no matter what I do, it's going to stay at that point. So let's do some resizing and some changing. And can you see how it just stays? But it's like I really want it to change a little bit. Let's change original height. But it's not doing what I really want. So guess what? Guess what we're going to do? I'm going to do that. I'm going to re-skew it and see what it does. And I'm going to now resize. I'm going to actually baseline that. And I'm going to resize it. I'm going to go back and I'm going to align it again and decide, do I like that or not? Not really. Let's go ahead and change it again. So I'm just going to kind of play. But what I really think I want to do is I'm going to go back to no resize. I'm going to go back to rotate. And I want to put it back. Whoops. Can you see what happened? It moved my area, which is not quite what I wanted to do because I had touched the area. So let's go into workspace here. And can you see where it has area? If I touch the area, I can modify that area. Or I can hit the inside a triangle design, and now it takes care of that. But now I'm going to go and, whoops, let's rotate. And I'm going to actually go here. And I'm going to change this a little bit. And I'm going to make it look like that. I'm going to rotate it again. I'm going to align it. I kind of like that better. Can you see that now the design actually isn't stitching all the way out to where I've already stitched it, because I've stitched this already once. I don't need to stitch it again. So let's just stitch it that way. I'm going to verify that my position is correct. So I'm going to put my needle right there and make sure it's where it needs to be. But I'm going to go to reposition and I'm going to hit start point. And it moved it so that it's right exactly where I needed it to be. I'm going to baseline that. I'm going to go to Pro Stitcher. And I'm going to hit run, proceed, took a stitch. Let's resume. But you saw I just kind of played with that design until I got it where I wanted it to be, doing what I wanted it to do. There I have some straight lines right next to that design that has the curves. Okay, we're going to do it in the other corners. So what I need to do is make sure I'm going to go ahead and clear my area. My design is still where I need it to be. So I'm going to create a new area.
All right, Sandy, we have a few questions.
Okay, of course.
Okay. Can you tell me the difference between skewing and echoing?
Skewing basically takes the design and makes it fit your area. The only way you can skew is to an area. Echoing is basically completely different. It's where you're taking that shape and you're echoing the shape. So you notice when I did this design in the center, I skewed it to the corners of my area. Rather than resizing it, I used that skew function to fit it to the area. So they're really two totally different functions.
Perfect. And I don't know that I get this next question, but I'm going to read it to you. When you create a design within a smaller area like that triangle, but if the design extends all the way to parts of the edges, would you still try to have to stitch it? Would you still have to try to stitch all of the area edges?
No, you could crop if you needed to. I'm not using the crop function, but you could crop if you don't want it. You have your area set up, and if you crop that, it will crop anything either inside the area or outside the area. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, they can put the comments.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. Read the question again.
When you create a design within a smaller area like that triangle, but if the design extends all the way to parts of the edges, would you still try to have it stitch all of the area edges?
I could. The reason I don't is I've stitched this once. I could have cropped it out, left it a little bit bigger and cropped it out, but I decided I wanted to make it a little bit smaller. So you do have options either way. So I could have cropped it if it was going outside of that area. But I wanted it to kind of fit a little bit different.
Okay. And then Dave would like to hear a little bit more about how to maintain your long arm machine and if you have to do anything special to maintain or update your pro stitcher.
Okay, that's multiple questions. Let's talk about maintenance on your machine. Couple things you want to do. Every time I turn on my machine, I actually take a small piece of batting and I clean my rails, I clean all the wheels, because you'll end up with black marks on your wheels if you don't, which is basically compressed lint, and it will kind of bog down the machine just slightly. But so I basically take that batting and I clean the wheels, I clean the rails, I make sure that there's no dust. The other thing I do is every time I change a bobbin, I am going to clean in the bobbin area. Now I can use a vacuum or canned air as long as it is one of the newer machines. As long as if you have an Avante, a Fusion, or some of the 16s, you don't want to use canned air. But if it's got a baffle between the bobbin area and the machine itself, you can use canned air to help clean. Every time I change a bobbin, I actually put 1 drop of oil in. I don't have to add oil anyplace else, just that one place every time I change my bobbin. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is you do want to take your machine in to be serviced every 2 years or every 10 million stitches. So sometimes it might be more often than it might be more often than 2 years if you are using it for a business. But you do need to do at least every 2 years or 10 million stitches. The machines are really easy to maintain. The key is to keep lint and dust away from your machine and keep it clean and do some simple things every time, and then you're not going to have any issues. I know that there are some people that say you can add things to your wheels and the rails to help them run smoother. That's not necessary. If you just keep them clean, free of dust and lint, then you'll be fine. Any other questions?
How do you trace an area?
Trace an area. So basically, what I would do, and I'll show you, might show you, basically it's what I'm doing is if I had wanted to, I could have actually, instead of using mark, I could have set up an area for this square, just set up an area for it, and then I would have gone down in the the bottom of the right-hand side of your sidebar, and there's a button that says trace area. And it would have then stitched that area out. Pretty great, easy to do. I use that all the time, especially if it's an area that I'm going to actually use that area to put another design in, but I want to set it. So sometimes I will go ahead and, like, if I want to put an 8-inch square and I want to stitch out that 8-inch square, I'll use the area, put in my area, trace area, stitch that 8-inch block out. Then I already have the area. Then I can add that other items into that the area that I already have, the other designs into that area. So let me go ahead and stitch this design out because what I'm going to do is a couple of things. I'm going to rotate it. Let's rotate it the way it needs to be, where it needs to be. Now, there it is. I know it fits here, but guess what? If I were to go ahead and just put my machine here, if I don't want to, I don't necessarily need to put an area. And I'm going to show you what it's going to do. Is I'm going to go to reposition. I'm going to hit start point. And can you see how it moved it? But I have to go in and clear that. So I have right here, and I could have, I've positioned it, but let's go ahead and I can show you if I were to put an area in here. I have to see, make sure it did. Can you see now how it fits that area? But I didn't necessarily need to put that area in. And I don't need to skew because I've gone ahead and made sure it fits the way I want it to fit. So I can go ahead now and I can stitch this out at this location. Now I don't need to put my needle right exactly the place that I need to start, that the machine actually will go there for me. And you can see it's just going to stitch this out again. And there I have that second little triangle done. I'll actually show you trace area when we do these little corners, just so that you get an idea of what's happening there. Now, I verify to make sure I have enough space before I go and do this next design, because I want to make sure that I am not setting up a design to stitch that's not going to be within my throat space. If you have an issue with that, you might want to set up quilting space. So for example, if I were to go over here, let me make this a little smaller. If I were to hit quilting space, I have to make sure it clicked. And I'm going to go over to the upper left, and then I'm going to come down here to the lower right, and I'm going to hit quilting space. And if you notice, can you notice that there's that black box? That's my quilting space. That tells me that's the space I have available to actually quilt in. So if I set up a design that's outside of that space, I know I'm going to have problems. And it's going to hit here, and it's not going to allow me to stitch as I want to stitch. So be aware of that. So if sometimes you want to just be aware of where you are stitching in relationship to your quilt, that is helpful. Okay, I'm going to go back here and I'm actually going to, yes, I'm going to show you, I'm going to actually clear that. I'm going to do it again so you can see, because I said we lost our connection. I'm going to change this. So basically what I'm doing is I'm coming up to the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to hit quilting space. I'm going to come down to my lower right-hand corner, and I'm going to hit quilting space. And you can see that black box, right? So that tells me that within this area, within that box, I can set up to quilt. Anything outside of that area is going to give me problems. So it really gives me a visual of what I want to, of where I can actually place my design to keep it within my throat space that I have available. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it up because it doesn't hurt anything. I'm going to go ahead and position my needle where I want to be here. Make sure it stays. And I'm going to actually do a couple things. I'm going to modify this design. So I'm going to rotate it so that it's oriented where I want it to be. I'm going to position this needle. There's more than one way to do everything in Pro Stitcher. And I'm just showing you a couple of options. So here you can see I've positioned it. It is right there, ready to go. I'm going to verify that it's fitting where I want it to be. So I'm positioning here, and it's like, yep, that's about where I want it. That's about where I want it. I'm good there. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this design out. Again, Pro Stitcher, quilt, run, proceed. Bring up my bobbin thread. I always grab hold of my bobbin thread. Oh, and I was going to show you guys how I pull up my bobbin thread and cut those threads. So when we're done with this, hopefully I'll remember to do that. So it's stitching that design. The last little part. Okay, I'm done stitching that design. So I'm going to bring up my bobbin thread. So the first thing I do is I grab hold of the thread and I loosen it so that I don't have actual pressure against my needle. I let it go. I move about a hand width away or so. It doesn't have to be exact. And then I grab hold of this again. I bring it back to where I stopped. I do a stitch down, stitch up, and as I pull away, you can see I've got bobbin threads and I've got my top thread. So there's going to be 2 bobbin threads and a top thread. And I want to pull it away about a hand width, because if you cut it too close, when I go to pull up and my bobbin at the beginning, if I don't have a long enough tail, I'm not going to be able to pull it up, and I'll have to go up underneath and add some additional length to that bobbin. Okay, we're going to do one more corner. Yes.
Can you show how to do a feather without a stitcher?
Yes,
Okay.
I can do that. I won't do it here, but what I can do is we actually can do a feather. We can do we can do a couple of different designs here, and we can do one of them as a feather. Not a problem. Okay, so this one I'm going to go back and actually I'm going to set up an area again. It's how we did it the first time, and we kind of played a little bit with it, finding which worked best. And let's do it here. So now, again, I'm going to go ahead and I have my area. I'm going to go to modify. I'm going to rotate it. And now I'm going to do a line. Let's do a left align and top. So that's another way that I can position my design. Now, when you use a line, you have to have an area to align it to. So remember that if you want to use a line, you have to have an area. Use the tools that are available to you in ProStitcher. It makes your job easier. I very seldom use my finger and move a design around. I use the tools that I have in ProStitcher. It's more accurate and makes it easier for you. So now I have this one. I'm going to baseline it, and let's go ahead and stitch this one out. So we're going to go ProStitcher, quilt, run, proceed. Let's pull up my bobbin, and again, I have to make sure it's long enough. That's why it's important when we cut that bobbin that we've allowed ourselves enough length on that bobbin to pull it up. Now my area was off a little bit. I must have leaned on this when I was setting it up, which could cause it to be off just a little bit. You don't think it does, but I had set it up and you can see right here that it's off, and it's because I was leaning on here when I was setting up that area. Okay, you guys wanted a feather. I'm going to advance, and I'm going to do a feather right here. That work for you guys? Okay. Now feathers, let's go ahead and hit clear all. When I do a feather, I have to turn off ProStitcher if I'm doing it free motion. So I'm going to turn off my gears. Now, the other thing, keep in mind, when I do feathers, I usually am going to draw the feathers before I actually stitch my feathers. It's like I have to get in the mood of the feather so that it makes it so that it's more successful. So I'm just going to, I haven't done a feather, quilted a feather in my last couple quilts haven't had feathers, so we're just going to wing it so you guys can see as I'm quilting this feather. Couple things to keep in mind when you do a feather. The spine is really important. A lot of times people don't think the spine is as important as it is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a spine, and then I come back. Now, I have feathers according to my feathers. Somebody else's feathers are going to look somewhat different, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add a feather in here. So again, start with the spine. Now it's easier for me to do a feather going left to right, but you can do a feather going right to left. But for my spine, I'm going to come over here, but first of all, I'm going to backtrack. Someone had asked about trace area. I'm going to do trace area here first so that I have an area just, well, I need to turn on. Maybe we'll skip that. But I do want to stitch this down, but I can go back and do that. So let's go ahead and go here. We're going to go here. I'm going to, now I have the option, a couple things I need to change on my settings is I'm going to go to my machine screen and I'm going to put my needle down. I'm in free motion. I want my needle down. I have the option of tying off using my on the left handlebar, going up and down a couple of stitches, or I can use my screen where it would do some stitches. So let's go ahead and do a little spine. We're just going to go here. Now, I have an option. I'm going to go ahead and cut my threads here. I could have just gone back and done an echo on that spine, but I am going to go ahead and cut my threads. It doesn't take very long. And I am going to go back here and we're going to do a feather. Now I'm going to do a traditional feather. There's lots of options you can do with feathers, but we're going to go ahead and do a traditional one. And I always start with, I either start with a teardrop shape or a half of a half. So let's just go here and do a little shape here. And can you see how I'm doing a bump back feather? But here I'm going to do a smaller one to kind of fill in that space. So I'm just coming up and around, backtracking over my previous stitching, up and around, backtracking. And I'm actually, can you see what I'm doing with my spine is I'm actually merging that design into the spine. Now here, I'm going to kind of do a little one here, and then I'm going to wrap around that one. Do another one here. I kind of help it a little bit. I find that I have a tendency to kind of use my finger, my hand to kind of guide it a little bit. You don't need to do that, but for me, that helps. Part of the reason I'm doing this is this machine isn't level. So it has a tendency, it wants to kind of shift a little bit for me. So I'm kind of helping it along because it isn't level. Now, I cannot do a feather going from the top to the bottom. I have to back. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to actually kind of do an echo. It's not perfect. On the spine to come back. Now, if I wanted this perfect, I would use a ruler to create my spine and then echo it with that same ruler. So let's go ahead and come back. Now, I'm not going to come back all the way here because I want to make sure I have space for my binding. So I'm going to come away about a ½ inch. So I'm going to do basically the same thing. I did that paisley shape, a bump back, come back, I didn't like the way that was looking, so I modified it. Now, my feathers are not perfect, and that's okay, because I'm going to be, when someone looks at it, they're going to see the overall. They're not going to look at maybe that little plume wasn't perfect, that little one might not be, but that's okay. I'm going to make it work, and it's going to work for me. Okay, there is a feather. But it kind of gives you an idea. Part of the key for a feather is, if you're doing feathers, is you want to have some consistency. You can see this machine keeps wanting to move. Is I wanted to make sure that as it came around on each plume, it merged. And I tried to keep these, the tops, rounded and pretty consistent when I'm doing this type of a feather. Now, there's lots and lots of variations on what you can do with a feather. Now, if I were to actually look at this, there's a couple of places that I'm not happy with. I'm not happy right here, but that's okay. I'm going to just go ahead, and if I wanted to, I could unstitch that and fix it. But for what we're doing, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it. Now, any other questions or comments?
When do you decide to use pro stitcher for a feather versus free?
It has to do, for me, so the question is when do you decide to use pro stitcher or free motion a feather? Frequently, it has to do with speed. If I can free motion a feather faster than I can do pro stitcher, I'm going to free motion it. And there are times it's faster to do a free motioned feather than it is to do a pro stitcher feather. There are some designers that have great designs for feathers, but sometimes I like the charm of a free motion feather that are not perfect, that have little modifications and little charming bits that you don't get when you're doing it in pro stitcher. So sometimes just that hand to just do it free motion gives it the charm that if it's absolutely perfect, you might not have. Okay, so let's continue on. We're going to actually, I need to make some modifications. While we're here at the bottom, I'm going to show you when I'm going to create an area, and then I'm going to hit trace area, so you can see what I would do for that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create an area here. First of all, I need to turn the gears back on. I need to change my machine setting so that my needle is up. I'm going to close that. Now I can go ahead and do an area. I'm going to do a multi-point. I'm going to do a multi-point. And this last area on the outside will actually, hang on, let me close this. There. I want to make sure it completed. So I have this. Now, if I wanted to, I'm going to go ahead and go to Pro Stitcher. I'm going to select Quilt. And can you see here? On the lower right-hand corner, it said trace area. I'm going to select trace area. I'm going to hit run, proceed. And you saw it turned green, right? Took a stitch. I'm going to hit resume. So you can see how I just used trace area for that. And now I have that little area available to me that I can go ahead and put another design in here. So I'm going to go here and select a design. Let's go ahead to open. Let's go back to blocks. And I'm using really just the same, the designs that come with your Pro Stitcher. We're just going to do a little 6-petal flower here. Now you can see it's a bit bigger than I want, right? So should we skew it and see what it does? So I skewed it to the area. So now that little feather, that little flower is going to fit right here. So let's go ahead and baseline it. Are you guys aware of what baseline does? Let's talk about baseline because a lot of people have a question about really what is baseline. In essence, what baseline does is it takes all of the changes that you've made to a design. So for this design, I pulled that design down, I hit skew, so it skewed it to fit into that area. So it made a lot of different changes. It changed the size. And now what it's doing when I hit baseline, in essence, is it is creating a new design. Now that design is not saved, but it is basically taking and packaging all of those changes so that the machine, so that Pro Stitcher can more efficiently stitch it out. So it just makes it so that instead of going here in the design and here in the design and here in the program in Pro Stitcher to make that design, it's like, okay, I'm going to pull this down, I'm going to pull this down. And then by baselining it, it in essence saves it and creates a new design. Now there are times as you're using Pro Stitcher that it is extremely important that you baseline, because if you don't baseline, then you cannot move on to do the next function correctly until that baseline has happened. So keep in mind, baseline is your friend. You cannot do it too much, but it is something that you really want to make sure that you are doing on a very regular basis. Anytime you're making a change, you can baseline. So let's go ahead and we're going to stitch a little flower over this little bird. We're pretending it's hiding in the flowers because they're kind of little birds and they're going to hide. They don't want to be found. They're just going to sing their song without you seeing them because they're hiding in the flowers. Now, something I want to verify for a minute, because we're going to use this same little design, but we're going to handle it a little bit differently as we do it again. So let's go in and hit modify and resize. And I want to see what size it is. So when it's skewed to 2.98 for the width and 2.96 for the height. And that's important for me to know because I'm going to do a couple of other things over on these other ones to set up for it to actually stitch out this little design. So I'm going to, first of all, go ahead and clear my area. And when I clear my area, I want you to watch and see what happens to that design. Because I baselined it, it stayed the same. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to basically do very similar. I want to stitch, I'm going to stitch just right here because I don't need to stitch that. So let's go ahead and use mark for that one again. So let's go to Pro Stitcher, record, mark. Let's, okay, so let me see what's happening with this, because it looks like something's happened to my my quilting space. Now, if you have one of the Moxie machines, you have to set up, I don't like where that went, so I'm going to undo because I want it to be right exact. And I am going to zoom in. Let's zoom. And all I did is draw a little square with my finger on the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quilt that. And then we're going to actually, we're going to do a border after we do this little design here. Now, one thing I don't know that if you have noticed or not, but there's times I might put a little bit of pressure on the quilt top. I can ever so slightly, just like when I lean against the bars here, it can distort. If I'm finding it's not right exactly where I am, I can modify ever so slightly where that's going to hit to make sure it hits just exactly where I want it to be. So I have that. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different because, like I said, we're just going to do some things just a slightly different. So I knew that this was about 3 inches.
Hey, Sandy, can you start over with this explanation? I was having issues with the screen.
Okay, which one?
Can you go back like 3 steps?
What? Okay. I'll do this again. This is what we had shown before. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to set up to do this flower in this square. I went ahead and turned on, I went to view grid and I turned on the grid because I want to estimate about where that center line is. So it's about, this is just one way. I'm showing you options. Might not be the best option. I'm just showing you an option because I want it to be about 1.5 inches. That's pretty good. I'm going to turn off the grid because I don't need it. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that right here. I'm going to go to modify. I'm going to go to reposition. Can you see where my crosshairs are? I'm going to hit start point. Hang on, undo. Because what I need to do is that is selected. So I don't need that anymore. So let's close it. And let's go to modify. Where's my design? My design is not where I want it. Hang on. Sometimes we get the bar across the bottom on our computer that, there's my design. Whoops. So I can't get to where I need. There we are. Okay, I want that. So I need to hit select. So it selects it. Again, I have this right here. I'm going to slightly move it a little bit. And I'm going to hit reposition start point. But in the meantime, I'm going to clear that. So I have that right here. What I'm going to do is verify, is it going to stitch where I want it to stitch? No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Because what do I need to do? I'm looking at the size. It's still the same size, but I don't like where it is. So let's do this. I'm going to position it right here. I'm going to go to modify, reposition, top left. Can you see how it shifted? I'm going to do that again. I'm going to move this guy out of the way. I'm going to put my needle right here in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to go to reposition, and I'm going to go to where it says top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, and I'm using those buttons to position where I want it to be. And now it moved it right where I needed it. I'm going to verify where it is. And you know what? I think I want it a little bit smaller. I'm going to resize it ever so slightly. But hit no resize, lock it. And I'm going to try that again. I'm going to reposition. And I place my needle here. And I'm using, when you use reposition, it is based off of your needle position. When I use align, it is based off of an area. So keep in mind, I'm going to use my needle position to help me position things on my screen, on my quilt. So here, top right, it moved it. I'm going to verify where it lands. I like the way it is there, like the way it is there, and I'm going to stitch it out. Let's baseline it, hit Pro Stitcher, run, proceed. It moved to where I needed it. Pull it up. Okay, again, I pulled that thread, went away, came back, took one stitch up, one stitch back, pulled up my bobbin thread, and cut it right there. Now, some people bury threads. My philosophy is, if it's going to a show and a judge is going to be judging it, I will bury my threads. If it is a quilt I'm doing and I'm giving away, we're just going to be using it to wrap up in, it's going on a bed. If it's not being judged, I don't bury my threads. But that again is a personal choice of what you choose to do. For me, I don't have time to bury threads. Okay, we're going to try a border. Who wants to do a border? Let me see if I can fit it here. I can't, so I'm going to shift it back a little bit. Loosen that a little bit. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Lily's helping me shift things. I can't quite get to where she is over there. So let's go ahead and hit clear. Hey, who wants to do a drawing? Are you guys wanting to do a drawing? We're going to do a drawing for the Glide 3 foot. That's the foot I have on right now that I'm using. The Glide foot is a wonderful foot. Anytime I'm doing Pro Stitch, I shouldn't say anytime, most times I'm doing Pro Stitcher, I'm using that Glide foot, especially if I'm doing an edge to edge. Do you know why we use the Glide foot? As you are stitching along, most of the time you're going to have a number of threads that are going to come, a number of fabrics, layers of fabric that are going to come together. So for example, you have a fabric here. You have a fabric that's going to come here and it's going to fold, and you're going to have that seam right here. With the glide foot, it comes here and it just glides over that little bump that you have, and it won't distort your fabric. Without the glide foot, it could move this ever so slightly so that that straight line is no longer perfectly straight. It moves it just ever so slightly. So that glide foot is a wonderful foot to use anytime you're using Pro Stitcher. So we're going to do a drawing.
Here we go.
So see who wins.
Sharon Waller.
Sharon Waller.
She's going to email spotlight@handyquilter.com.
So Sharon, you need to email spotlight@handyquilter.com and let us know who you are so that we can send you that Glide 3 foot. Okay, so you ready for a border? We're excited. They're excited. Sharon's excited. Yay, we're glad. Yeah, okay, so we're going to do borders. Now, this is how I do a border. So let's talk about borders for a minute. Most of the time, when I do a border, I'm going to do a top border, make it fit. I'm going to do the two corners. And I'm going to do a border that fits in between those two corners. I'm going to save those as designs, and I actually have a folder in Pro Stitcher that I put those designs in because I'm going to use them again when I get to the bottom of the quilt, and I'm going to adapt them when I get to the sides. So I actually will do the two corners, stitch between each one, and then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to do the bottom. Now, in between, what I'm doing here is I will actually be basting these side borders because I want to make sure that they are stable. So I'll baste those down. I don't stitch them at this point. And then what I do is I will unpin, I will rotate my quilt, and so that now the side borders are the top and the bottom, and then I will do my side borders to make sure that they fit. Now, there are times that I might chunk a border. What that means is I will fill in what border, will stitch what fits into my throat space, and then move forward and stitch what fits in my throat space. But the only time I do that is if it is a small enough design that I can calculate about how much it's going to take as I'm advancing. And if it is within a certain tolerance for me for that last bit, it will fit easily without too much distortion. Some borders will do that. Others, it's a little harder, and then that's the ones I definitely will actually turn my quilt and make it fit. So let's go ahead and create first of all, I'm not going to stitch in the ditch in this. I'll go back later and stitch in the ditch. But what I want to do is here, I'm going to come in. I'm going to have it go all the way to the end, but I'm going to leave a little bit on the sides. So when I set up my area, I'm coming in about 1/4 of an inch in from that, and about 1/2 an inch in from the edge on the side. Can you see what I'm doing? So I have a rectangle here. That's not a very clean rectangle. So I'm going to modify that. I'm going to clear. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I didn't think it through because I went all the way to the edge instead of giving myself that 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to come down. It's pretty straight here. And I'm going to come in about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm not all the way over. Okay, can you see I've got that rectangle? Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and open a design. I'm going to do a continuous line design. So what design shall we do? How about we do ribbon candy? I was going to do leaves.
Ooh.
We're going to do some leaves because, again, these little birds are hiding in the leaves and the flowers. So can you see I have my area here and I have this design. I'm going to do some modification first of all. And actually, I'm going to do some math. So I'm going to go back to my area. So my height of my area is about 12.5 inches. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to rotate. I'm not going to rotate. I'm going to actually go in and I'm going to do some repeats. And I'm going to now baseline that. And I don't know for sure. That works. I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to now go here and I'm going to go skew. And I'm going to hit a border skew and decide, do I like the way that that looks? If it's the way I want it, I can leave it at that and just let it be. Or let's say I maybe don't like that. How about we go back to repeat, and I'm going to add one more. And I'm going to try it again. Let's border skew it and see what it does. Oh, guess what? Do you like that? I think not. I think that kind of messed it up, didn't it? So let's undo. Undo. Let's see how many repeats we have. Oh, you know what? We have to undo that baseline. Turn off baseline to undo beyond baseline. Did we do 3 and it worked okay? Let's skew. Let's rotate it. Did you see what happened when I rotated it? Look at what happened to the design. Because I had not baselined that design when I did the repeat, it treated each one individually. So that's why it's important to baseline. And that's not working. So we're going to play some more. Let's try it that way. I'm going to baseline. For some reason, this skew, it worked the one time, but it's not working this time. So we're going to, actually, it's like when it's giving you problems, guess what? You start over. So I still have my area there, but I'm going to go ahead and hit. Thank you, Lily. Lily's trying to keep me happy. Let's go ahead and do repeat. And let's add 1.
People are saying rotate before you skew.
I'm going to baseline. Yes. I'm going to rotate. That's what I did before, right? You guys are keeping me honest. Thank you. Yes. Beautiful. So basically, you can see how I made it fit. The key is the area, and I did it right the first time, and then it's like, wait a minute, I'm not doing it. So thank you for keeping me honest. So basically, when I hit skew, now, if this were my design, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that design. I'm going to save it so that I can pull it back when I reuse it again. So it shouldn't be, I'm going to go ahead and start stitching this design. And while it stitches, I'm going to get a drink of water.
Good job.
We're just going to stitch that out. Beautiful. Okay, should we do this again? For this, we're going to do this side. I'm going to show you when I do this other side what I'm going to do. So let's go ahead and clear my area. And I'm going to create a new area. So this area is not real straight. So give me a minute. I'm going to redo this. Okay. Let me undo, clear that, and I'll do it again. So let's go ahead and hit multi-point. And this is not a really straight border, right? Because sometimes our borders, in fact, guess what? I need to undo that because I didn't come in 1/4 of an inch like I did on the other one. So let's go ahead and redo it again. Because this design doesn't go right to the edge, it's not as critical that I have it absolutely perfect, but it's nice to have it better than not perfect. Okay. Now, a couple things I want to do here. I'm going to go in and modify this. I'm going to go to rotate. Now, whenever I rotate on a border, I never use mirror or flip. I always use the 45-degree angles because I want it to follow all the way through so that this one, it was going this way. The other one, I want to have it go the other way. So did you see it kind of messed it up as I was rotating it a bit? But now my bottom is, the start is at the bottom instead of at the top, but it follows it and flows the way I want it to go. So it is directional. Now, if it's not directional, it's not as critical, but if most borders are directional, I want it to go around the border, not go different ways around each of those borders. Okay. Any questions? So how's your summers going? So tell me a project that you're working on with your long arm this summer. And remember, just have fun. I didn't hear. Pardon me? The holders.
I don't know. I'll ask them for more details. Keep stitching. You're good.
Okay. Unsure quite what the question was. Holders. Oh, those. Where did I sit them? Yeah. These. Okay. Almost done. Okay. I think the question was the easy clamps. The easy clamp, I don't remember what they're called. These are great. So basically the thing to remember about these is they are frame specific. So there are ones for the Gallery 2 frame, there are ones for the Studio 3 frame, and there's ones for the Loft frame, as well as the little foot. Yes, my brain is like, I know it is. So you do need to get them specifically for your machine. And they just clamp on and clamp off, and that's what I use as I do this, as I'm doing the extra for my tensioning, when I do my tensioning. Okay, any questions?
If you were to get one, let's say you're a new quilter, and you're going to get, you already have the glide foot, what accessory would you recommend for newer quilters they should get?
I want everyone to try rulers. So there's two. If you're doing rulers, you have to have two accessories. You have to have the ruler base, and you have to have the shore foot. And in fact, we're going to shift. We've worked a lot on this project. It's what we would be doing is more of the same. So we're going to actually do another project where we're going to use rulers. And we're going to use the ruler base. And so if you want to just bear with me, I'm going to make some changes, add the ruler base, and get ready. And I'm going to get set up. So this is the ruler base. And these are machine specific. So the Amaras have one, the Loft machine has one, and the Infinity machine has one, but they're really just put them up on. Now the reason you need that ruler base is you don't want the rulers rocking, so you want to make sure that you have a ruler base on. The other thing we need is the shore foot. So let me find, not in here. Let me find the shore foot. The shore foot has a higher profile. So if you look at it, here is the regular foot that comes with your machine. So if I put it here, you can see the profile of your regular foot that comes with your machine. this machine, you can see on this foot, you can see how it's a, I won't put my hands in the way. Thank you. I have to have prompts. Just my left hand. So you can see it's got a higher profile. And because of that higher profile, I can use rulers. With this one, I have there is the chance for that ruler to go up and over that foot. Less likely with that short foot. So I'm going to actually change the machine, change the foot. I'm going to actually go ahead and clear all here. I'm going to go, first of all, I go to my machine screen and I'm going to raise my needle up as high as I can get it. Can you see? I went in and used that hand wheel. I'm going to now loosen this. Now I don't take it out all the way. This is a hopping foot. I pull it up and it hops out. When I put this on, I pull it up, and when I am tightening the screw here, I'm going to put my finger right underneath this foot and I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to hold it as I tighten it. Okay. So now I've got my ruler base on. I've got my foot on here. And I'm going to get my fabric. Give me just a second. These. And I could actually use, a lot of times I'll go ahead and use the black thread, but I'm just going to go ahead and continue using the pink thread because it doesn't really matter. I'm just dropping things here. Just ignore me. I'm going to set this up. Thank you. I'm going to line it up here because I'm going to just kind of cradle it right next to this other one. And I'm going to baste it down. And I actually, because I'm doing ruler work, I need to bring it closer to me because I don't want to stretch my body out so that it's uncomfortable. Okay, thank you. We put the side clamps on. Now you can see that I'm closer to the machine now. Okay, so I'm going to actually go ahead and baste this down. So I'm going to change to a basting stitch. Okay, one thing that I have an issue with rulers is sometimes the clamps get in the way. I'm going to have to move this over anyway. And I'm going to just baste it down to there. Now, let's talk about basting. When I'm basting, I will baste across. I basically, first of all, when I put my backing on and my batting, I'm going to do a plumb line across. And then I can line up my quilt top to that. I will then baste across the top and I will baste down the sides on the first run. After I've advanced my quilt, each time I then base the sides, I start at the bottom and work up. I don't pull down because I want to control any fullness that could be happening. And so I'm always going to baste up after that first initial basting down. So give me just a second to adjust some things here. Okay. What we're going to do is we are going to do a stitch as you go, quilt as you go on this little quilt using a ruler. And I find it helpful initially. I'm just going to kind of lay these out so I can just kind of grab one. They're just basically all I have are some melon shapes that are kind of they're all the same size, just some melon shapes. And I'm just going to grab these as I'm stitching. And the other thing I'm using is I'm using a little bit of glue on some of the corners. I'm going to actually put a little bit of glue, and I have this slice 1 ruler that I'm going to actually be using. So let's go ahead and we're going to start. Now, if you see, I don't know if you guys can see on the fabric, I've done a grid. So when I did a grid, what I did was I measured from one point to the other point, and then I made my grid 1/4 of an inch shorter so that I have a slight overlap on these melon shapes. And I'm going to use a little bit of glue. Now the glue is not significant, just a little bit to hold those corners. Can you see how those corners are being held? I'm now going to position, and I'm using the ruler to help me as I position. And it's first time to position this. Whoops, let's get it off basting. And I'm going to do a couple of back stitches. I'm going to actually use the ruler to kind of hold it. And I'm just going to stitch along. Whoops, I forgot something. What did I forget, guys? I need to turn off my gears. Like it was really stiff. So I need to also put my needle down so that when it stops needle down. Let's go ahead and pick another fabric. Again, I'm going to put just a tiny bit of glue on the corners. I'm going to lay it down.
Sarah, just got a very brief question.
Yes.
When using rulers, do you prefer standard or clear view?
I usually am in clear view. The reason I'm in clear view is because then I don't have this pole, my backing at reverse. My backing's on this pole, and my quilt top comes up and around so that I have a clearer view of really what I'm doing, but also the pole doesn't get in the way as I'm using the rulers. So I always am, I'm frequently in clear view because I'm using rulers quite frequently. So my machine is usually in clear view because I use rulers quite frequently.
Then what did you call this project? Stitches You Quilt?
It's a quilt as you go. Basically, we're basically making a quilt without doing any piecing. you want to see what it looks like? Hang on. This is what it looks like. This is what we're making. So you can see it's just those melon shapes. And you can see just melon shapes in the back, but it's really just these melon shapes that I just laid the pieces down and I quilted over each one. So that's what we're making. Any questions? So I'm going to just kind of stitch. When I get close, I'm going to grab another one. And I find it's helpful to, like I said, to just put that little bit of glue right on those corners. Using the ruler to help me position. Should we do an orange one? And this is just pretty random what I'm doing. Now, I'm doing the first row. When I actually am ready, can you see how on this top row, I just cut it in half right through there when I went ahead and added the binding. So let's finish this one. Lay this down now. I might slide my ruler a little bit to position it where I want it to be. Let's go ahead and should just keep the lid off of this one because it'll be easier. I'm going to lay that down where they overlap ever so slightly. Bring it down. Use this to help guide. Now when I come back, I'm just going to flip it and I'm going to come back. Any questions? Again, if you are looking for accessories, they're 15% off using the code HQQF. So make sure that you order those accessories today. Also, if you get a machine this week, if you order a machine, call in and order it, you get free shipping for this week. But you have to call Handi Quilter to do that. So make sure you call Handi Quilter and order your machine, order Pro Stitcher because Pro Stitcher is a great price right now. Order Pro Stitcher. You saw the great fun things I did on the other little quilt. Order Pro Stitcher and get the price before it goes up because there is a price increase on July 1st. So go ahead and look and see what great prices there are. But go ahead, call in and get your accessories using that code HQQF. So have fun. And if you say, what accessories do I want? Well, you want all of them. I can tell you which ones I use all the time. I'm doing rulers right now. There are a lot of different rulers that are available. My recommendation, if you're looking for a ruler, is number one, get a straight edge ruler. I really like the straight edge that have a little foot on them, that when I line things up, I have that mark so I can line up where my 1/4 inch stitch line is going to be. And then you want rulers with a convex and a concave shape because you will use those convex and concave shapes. And then there's so many great rulers. I use all of them. I have the whole assortment and I use all of the rulers all the time. So they're a lot of fun. So look at what rulers are available and have fun. Yes. My favorite ruler is the Baby Grand. And the reason that's my favorite ruler is, number one, it fits my hand. It's a little bit smaller ruler. It has a straight edge on it. It's not a very big straight edge. It's got a curve, a half circle. It's got another little curve, and it's got a little notch in it. And I did bring it, if I can figure out where I put it. I don't know where I put it. But go look for the Baby Grand, because it has a notch that fits around your hopping foot that helps guide you around shapes if you are going around applique. And every time I'm stitching around applique, I'm stitching using that ruler to help guide me around each of those shapes. So that ruler is my favorite, is the Baby Grand. So yes, yes, it is a raw edge project, and I'm stitching everything down. When it washes, it gets a little bit fuzzy, but you know what? That's part of the charm of this little project. There's no piecing involved. It's just a fun little project. This is the Baby Grand. This is the packaging. This is, I don't know if you can see. Can you see right there? That is the Baby Grand. You can see it's got a straight edge. It's got the half circle. It's got another shape, another convex shape here, and a little bit of a slight concave here. But can you see this little cutout here? Remove this ruler out of the way. Can you see how it fits right there? So that as I want to, I can guide around applique, and this helps steady my hand as I'm stitching around applique. So this one I use all the time, especially if I'm stitching around applique. So we all have our favorites. That's mine. Okay, let's continue on and stitch some more of this. And you can see I'm just now coming back, holding it down on the other side. The first one I was a little bit, you can see I was a little bit, it was too much, but I'm cutting that off because I'm going to cut right here when I do my binding. But it was a good first one to kind of see where I wanted to go. Now my next one is going to come down here. I'm going to come down. And again, I'm going to kind of line it up. And let's try this one. And we're just kind of playing. This is a really easy, simple project. You don't have to do any piecing on it. All the edges are raw. There is no applique, true applique involved. It's just a really fun little project to do. So I'm stitching around. Now I'm going to go up. Let's see which one I want to go up. So can you see how I went? I'm not going to do row by row. I'm going to finish up and go up and back. And actually, I'm going to kind of move this out of the way a little bit. A little bit of glue. Line it up on that line so that it overlaps ever so slightly. I just have found it helps to do that little teeny bit of glue on those corners to help stabilize it a little bit. Now, can you see another thing I'm doing here? Can you see how I'm kind of sliding my foot, my ruler, to help me get where I want to be. Let's do this little one here. So I'm going across and up and down. Laying it down. I'm going to come to that corner. So if your ruler is not exact to what you need, you can slide it ever so slightly to help fit it so that it fits right where you need it. So I'm going to line this up again here. I'm going to back out just a smidge. Now, one thing to keep in mind, as I'm using rulers, I'm stitching where my hand is. This is a small enough ruler that it's not a problem, but if you don't want a ruler where you're holding it down here, but you're stitching it here, that's just going to cause some issues if you do that. So you want to make sure you're holding it where you're actually stitching. Let's do another one. Line it up along that grid, and you can see how that grid really is just showing me where I'm placing everything. Makes it easier. Try this one. And I have no rhyme or reason as far as what I'm actually using. I'm just trying to get some fabrics that are not exactly the same. So that there's some variation. But you can see how simple and easy this project is. And it is raw edge. I haven't done one of these. Oh, well, see, I thought about doing one of these, but I have that one right there. So let's try something different. Let's try this one. No, I'm just using a regular sharp. So someone asked if I was using a ballpoint needle on the batiks, and I say no. I'm just using a regular R, which is a sharp needle. I could use a ballpoint. The two types of needles I usually use are the R needles, which is a sharp, or an FFG. The FFG is a soft ballpoint. And there are times that I will use the FFG when I'm using batiks. Not always, because I haven't found a big difference, but I have found a difference with the FFG versus the sharp when I am stitching on a digitally printed fabric. So what happens with that digitally printed fabric is it is printed on the top of the fabric. It doesn't go all the way through. So when your needle hits it, you get a slight flare. You could get a slight flare where that thread turns ever so slightly with that needle. And I find that you get fewer flares with the FFG needle versus the R needle. So that is one of the times that I really do pay attention to if I'm using an R or if I'm using an FFG. So again, I'm just stitching along. I'm going to stop right there. Let's pull this one. And lay it down. So you can see this is pretty simple to do. Now, I also have one, I'm not going to do it, that I've actually done it with just squares. I haven't actually done it with the melon shapes. I've actually just done the same grid, and then I'm just doing a square, leaving a little bit of space in between each one. And that gives a really cute little quilt as well. Now, one thing to keep in mind, ruler work is not fast. It does take more time when you're using a ruler, but you can get some great precision with rulers. I'm going to lay this one down. I'm going to lay it down this way because I won't like that point better. Again, hold using my ruler to hold it down. Oops, I went off a little bit, so I just come back. Nobody's going to know, right? Because this is really one that is just a fun, simple little project. It's got the raw edges, so you know it's not going to be one that's going to it's mainly made to just be used and washed and just have fun with it.
What settings do you use when you are doing rulers?
Okay, when I'm doing rulers, couple things I have is I have it in regulated. Sometimes I will use cruise, sometimes I will use precision, but if I'm using cruise, it's a low speed, so about 100, 125 for speed. I always have my needle down because I want it to stop when I stop. I don't want it to shift at all. I want it to stop where I stop. And really, those are the machine settings. Pretty basic settings. The key really truly is the foot you're using and the ruler base, and making sure that your rulers are that 1/4 inch thickness. You don't want to use any of those cutting rulers that are not that 1/4 inch thickness. You'll have issues if you try to do that.
Sandy, does your thread matter?
Pardon me?
Does your thread matter?
No. I use all kinds of threads with rulers. I use anything from you can use the 30 weight Sofine thread, which is a heavier thread, I usually am not using monopoly, but I will use rulers with micro quilter, which is a 100 weight thread. I use it all the time actually with micro quilter, because if I'm doing straight lines as a micro quilting to push down the quilting, that area, I use rulers all the time. So anything from a 30 weight to 100 weight, it really doesn't matter. You can use any of those threads with rulers.
Perfect. Thank you.
So what am I going to do now? I'm going to just basically come back here. And just kind of follow it along. Again, this is not, real precision, but it's just a fun little project to do. But you don't have to think too much. You just kind of have fun. You can use your little scraps of fabric that you have. You can cut it in melon shapes and just use it. Use it to create a fun little project. You can make a little pillows out of this. You can do, again, I came off a little bit. So there's my first row. Go ahead and do another row. Which color should we do? Let's just try this one. Yeah, as I am getting ready to do this this next row, just just a reminder that if you order a pro stitcher through Handi Quilter, you get shipping for free. Again, that is in the continental United States, basically not counting Alaska and Hawaii, because and Canada and some foreign countries, that is not free included shipping. But you have to call the number to get your free shipping. If you don't call the number, you're not going to get that shipping for free. The other is if you're getting any of the great accessories, you want to make sure that you use the code HQQF to get 15% off of those accessories. Now, people ask, what's your favorite accessory? There's so many accessories. I showed you the easy clamp clasps. Is that what they're called? Anyway, couple of other things I use. See the highlight? The highlight is wonderful. So look at the highlight. It makes a huge difference with your quilting. It's beautiful to have that additional light. I find as I'm quilting, I really do need that additional light. So think of the highlight. Another thing I really like is the secret drawer. I don't know if any of you have that secret drawer, but it holds so much thread and so many things under your machine that you're saying, I don't have enough storage room. Put a secret drawer. It just makes it's amazing. Now, I say it holds a lot of thread. I want you to keep in mind it's important how you store your thread, because if your thread is exposed to light and is exposed to dust, then it is not as good of thread. It will disintegrate, and you want to make sure that always put your thread out of the sunlight. That's why that secret drawer is so great for holding threads. Do any of you have a secret, not a secret, might be a secret that you haven't shared, a favorite accessory that you really like and that you would recommend? So if you do, just put a comment and let's see what some of your favorite accessories are. And remember, there is that price increase that is happening July 1st. Now, I think I need to advance this. So let me advance just a little bit. I want to make sure I advance before I run into a problem. Okay, thank you. Because it's always nicer. I could go up and get that one, but I'm going to not. I'm just going to stitch this one down here. So has anyone said what their favorite accessory is yet? Oh, the Handi hammock. The Handi hammock is great. So basically what that does is it is a hammock. That's why it's called a Handi hammock, that fits underneath your frame, that catches your batting. When you use that, my recommendation is you fan fold your batting as you put it in that hammock, so that as you pull it out, it just gently feeds out of the hammock. But it's great so that your batting is really not sitting on the floor. Right now on here, they are sitting on the floor, but that Handi hammock is absolutely wonderful. Highly recommend that one as well. Any others? The Versatool is another great ruler. That's the one when we go out and teach, we use the Versatool when we teach rulers, because it's got the convex and the concave shapes. It's got a straight line, of the straight edge, and it also has a 90-degree angle in there. So it is a great little ruler. And if you want just to start off with, that is a great starting ruler to start with. Thank you. And this is, I'm going to pull it out so you can see. Can you see it against the black? So you've got a straight edge. You've got this. This actually becomes a 4-inch circle if you make it as a circle. So it's 2 inches. Yeah. You've got this 90-degree angle, and you have this angle as well. I want you to notice, can you see this line and this line? And here, a couple of things this has is it says a 1/2 inch. So that's a 1/2 inch from your needle position when you use this ruler, and your 3/4 inch. Now you can see here, if I were to line this up here against my markings and I stitch it, I can line it up here, I can line it up here, and then when I stitch between those, I've got my straight line, and this helps me with my alignment. So this is a great tool. I also will use this tool when I do a binding on my long arm. I will use that Versa tool, and it helps make that very, very clean and easy. Okay. Any others? Let's see what else. Let's do one of these. I'm just going to lay these here now, and then I have it there ready to go. And I'm just going to stitch, 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 making sure that that raw edge gets held down. I'm going to hold it again here. And stitch and hold it down. Now I put mine with against black. You don't need to put it against a black frame background. You can do any color you want. If you want to do red, you can do red. If I had wanted to, I could have done a blue, a navy blue here. I could have done any color. I could have done a yellow, whatever you want. But this is a great way to use some of those scraps that you have, these little pieces that is like, what do I do with these little pieces? I don't know what to do with them. It gives you a great way to use some of those up and gives you a cute little quilt.
Okay, Sandy, we're going to end in 5. We're going to end in 5.
Okay. So, any questions before we move on? Because we are going to finish fairly quickly. So I want to make sure if there's any questions that you have about any of the Handi Quilter machines or any of the techniques or anything with Pro Stitcher, let us know any of those questions so that we can answer them for you. And so we've had just a fun time. I really am thankful that you guys have joined us and joined us on Handi Quilter's Summer Quilt Fest. It's been fun. And if you have any questions, just know, remember, in order to get that free shipping, you need to call Handi Quilter. Remember, prices will increase July 1st. So now is the time to get those orders in for your machines. If you've been thinking about a Handi Quilter machine with Pro Stitcher, now is the time to go in and make that commitment so that you can have fun with your quilting journey. Now, a lot of times people say, well, why do I want a long arm? One of the reasons I bought a long arm is I wanted to control the entire process. I wanted to control my quilt from concept to completion, and I didn't want to give it to someone else to quilt. So for me to be able to do that myself was a huge win. And I am so thankful that I did because it's been fun. I've been doing long arming since 2010. So that's 15 years. So 15 years of long arm quilting, and it's just fun. And every I push myself to find new things and try new techniques and continue to grow. And I've been able to continue to grow in this long arm journey for 15 years, just like you can. So remember to buy your accessories using that code and order your machines now before the price increase on July 1st. Okay, thank you so much. I hope we've given you some great ideas.